Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Ragnarok Season 1, a Netflix fantasy show. And before I get into it, I will try to keep spoilers to a minimum, as I have been with several of my recent reviews. However, some details might slip through. So fair warning, there might be some spoilers if you're someone who, doesn't like spoilers in their review. But, like I said, I will try to keep it to a minimum. Now, getting into it, what is Ragnarok about? Well, Ragnarok is about... It primarily focuses on Magna, his brother Lortis, and mother Turid, and they move to the town of Ada. Now, unfortunately for Magna, he has the new kid in town syndrome. What do I mean by that? Being the new kid, he's shy, he's awkward, and most of his classmates don't seem to want to have anything to do with him. It seems that he's clearly on the road to just being the unpopular kid. Now, fortunately for Magna, a young woman, Isolde, does extend, the hand of friendship, and she does try to make him feel welcome. As they get to know each other, Magna learns that she is a bit of a local environmental activist, and she is taken, great concern in the town's ecosystem, especially because a number of their residents have had a much higher rate of cancer than in other towns. So, of course, being a young, conscientious person, she has taken it upon herself to conduct several independent studies and even send samples of the local drinking water to scientific institutes for environmental studies. So, they get to know each other and they get a bit chummy. But unfortunately, Isolde meets with an accident, unfortunately, and I laugh a little bit after that because the antagonists do not hide their hand very well. Okay, like this accident happened to be where this young woman, for unknown reasons, just decided after school I'm gonna paraglide. Just like, as sometimes, you might go on a walking trail or maybe hang out at a local comic shop or maybe at, like a local restaurant to meet up with your buddies. Well, this young lady happened to just impulsively decide to paraglide into the side of a mountain. As I mentioned, the villains are not particularly subtle. It is written off as an accident, but clearly there's something more sinister at hand, especially when, once again, she was about to expose her findings on social media, and the primary antagonists of the show, the Jotun. Jotun? That's... Why would I ever have to say that? The Jotun family. Not Jotun. Anyway, Jotun. Yeah, that's an interesting word, Jotun. That kind of reminds one of Jotunheim. Wonder why. But why would anyone confuse the Jotuns with anything regarding, Jotun or Jotunheim? Maybe if you're slightly familiar with Northern European mythology, maybe you'd make that mistake, but just... Okay, silly error on my part. But they are a very powerful and wealthy family in charge of a giant shipping company. And while most of the family does a very good job of blending into normal society, the mother is the headmistress of Magna's secondary school, high school. We call it high school here in the States. But, so the mother's the headmistress and the two children are just a I believe the equivalent would be junior and one senior. So they do a decent job of blending in among, we mere mortals. The father, Vidal. The father is just... There is no way that anyone would ever not suspect this person of being evil incarnate. I'm sorry, just... The actor does a really, really good job of playing a villainous character. So before I go off on a tangent and then go off on just how evil this guy is, clearly the actor does a very, very good job. So, anyways, back to it. So, unfortunately, in the wake of Isolde's death, Magna begins his own, let's call it an investigation. He does a little snooping around, and it seems that the Utol family is at the top of the list of suspects. Mostly because in this small town, I would imagine that it's kind of impossible for anyone else to be suspect. Now, yes, they did frame it as an accident, but once again, clearly, for unknown reasons, this young woman who really was never mentioned any interest in paragliding in the slightest, just decided, you know what, I'm going to take off a very dangerous and expensive hobby on her last day of life. Yeah, this... For anyone interested in the truth, no, this young woman did not pass away from anything close to natural causes. And as Magna becomes more familiar with the Utol family, it becomes clear that they are far more than they seem. They're far more powerful than us mere mortals, and they are interested in... Gonna stop myself. I want you to see the first season. One of the detractors that a lot of reviewers have mentioned is that while it was advertised as a action series, now people who are even vaguely familiar with Ragnarok are familiar with the Twilight of the Gods, the grand epic of the end of the gods and the battle for the end of the world, essentially. Now, there is a lot that parallels the ancient Norse mythology, but it doesn't really take off as our main character fighting otherworldly forces from the get-go. Instead, the series frames itself mostly within the aspect of a murder thriller. We have a suspicious death. We have our primary protagonist investigating this death. We have our primary suspects. And as the story unfolds, a just palpable tension emerges between Magna and the Utol family, and how they really have a death grip on this community. And as he uncovers more and more, he also undergoes a kind of transformation. He begins to change and embody, I'll just say this, embody certain aspects of ancient heroes. Maybe one in particular. But once again, I'm trying to contain my enthusiasm. A lot of the story is, informed by and shaped by Norse mythology. And I am a mythology junkie. And so even though it didn't pan out as a straight action show, it works, like I said, as a murder mystery, a murder thriller, because the villains tip their hand quite obviously, but still, a murder thriller and almost like magical realism. Like, how would these mythological characters fit in with the modern world? How would their schemes fit in with the modern world. Like, clearly, as, like, conscientious humans of the 21st century, if there were ancient, powerful beings, working towards the destruction of mankind, well, clearly we'd understand that, and we'd work against that, wouldn't we? Isn't that something that we do, fighting against obvious evil in this day and age? Certainly we wouldn't be complacent about it. Not an act, just the weight of the contemporary world. Sometimes just gets to you. But still, the storytelling involved, capitalizing on complacency, say with corporate conspiracies, or industrial intrigue, it works extraordinarily well. And the action does slowly build as the series goes on. And I think the pacing works so well within the first 6 episodes that it might not be what you initially expected, but it slowly grows into something that is a little bit more of what you expected. All right. That being said, in all fairness, I will not say that there's any outright epic action in the first series. But once again, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's just my likes, and maybe just enough of the right boxes were checked off that I've seen the first season about 4 times now. So there's just enough that clearly I fit into certain niche demographics. Particularly, once again, I'm a mythology junkie. So with regards to reinventing these ancient characters into a modern setting, it really worked for me. And so I highly recommend this. If you are interested in Norse mythology, I think that alone should be enough to sustain you. Yeah, like, once again, it's not particularly action heavy, but the way that the narrative is shaped and the pacing, not only that, but just as the story goes between the contrast of the concept of Ragnarok and the destruction of the natural world, a consensus that even among staunchly negative reviews, people have mentioned the outright beauty of the setting, and indeed the sinister aspect of, people or corporations, being so negligent in their abuse of the natural world is in of itself, it's rather frightening, and it's rather moving for narrative purposes. So this has gone on a little bit longer than I was hoping to, but if nothing else, please do yourself a favor and watch Season 1 of Ragnarok. Now, as of the recording of this episode, Season 2 is, well, it's tomorrow. But all that being said, I did want to do a review that's in order. My most recent review of Castlevania was of Castlevania Season 4, and, well, I had to give a very summarized version of how I felt about the first 3 seasons. So, yeah. I wanted to do things in order this time. So, even though it's close to the wire, I would still say that throughout a given week, because the season is so short, and the second season is just on the way, I think you will, if you enjoy it, you will immediately know that you enjoy it. And I'll put it to you this way. As long as Season 2 is as good as Season 1, because of my particular interests and whatnot, I'll be satisfied. I'm not expecting it to exceed that. I hope it does. But, still, if it stays on the same level as this season, then I think we're all in for something very special. So, there's my review of Ragnarok Season 1. But what about you? Have you seen Season 1? How do you think that it worked in the traditional Norse mythology? who is your favorite character? If you like this review, please give it a like. If you want to help the channel grow, please consider subscribing. But overall, thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.